a year ago, there were 121 schools rated D and F. Today, 1 year later, under more accountability, less administrators, less dollars spent, and better instruction and curriculum, that those 121 D and F rated schools are now down to 39. I guess my question is, back to your point, how many did we leave behind in waiting to do that?
Ready to roll?
Yep.
All right.
Real Texan.
Why should this matter to real Texans? Thanks for joining this episode of Real Texans. It seems like everyone is starting to recognize that institutions of higher education have become indoctrination centers. Today, we're sitting down with Brandon Creighton, a member of the Texas Senate, who chairs the Education Committee and the Subcommittee on Higher Education. And Brandon, you have been kind of taken up the cause of reclaiming institutions of higher education. I want to start by saying, why is this important to you? Wouldn't it just be easier to be a member of the rah-rah tailgating squad rather than the guy trying to reform higher ed?
Michael, yes, first, it's great to be here with you. And absolutely, to answer your question, that's what Republicans have been doing for many, many years, is just focusing elsewhere, right? And it seems like on issues for education and also healthcare, the left has developed an incredible deep bench and skill set on incrementally achieving their agenda year after year after year, while Republicans have, again, focused elsewhere. And I, for one, decided that we needed to change that. So we have, with the Lieutenant Governor's support and dedication, we have assembled an education committee in the Senate and combined the subjects of K through 12 and higher ed, and we're making a difference.
You were first elected to the Texas House in 2006. In a special election in 2014, you moved over to the Texas Senate. So you've now spent, a little over a decade.
That's right.
In the Texas Senate.
It's terrifying when you put it that way, but yes, yeah, that is true.
We think a lot of life decisions.
Yes.
It is noteworthy that for a long time, and a lot of this is not a slam on the Texas House or in the Texas anyone else, but for a long time, in most legislative bodies, K to 12 and higher ed are kept completely separate in policymaking. What was the mindset behind putting those together for the legislature in the Texas Senate?
In Austin, in the Capitol, the best thing that we can do as legislators is bring in expertise, of course, but also more importantly, to listen to everyday Texans. In Washington, D.C., Jim and Mary Smith from anywhere, Texas, can no longer testify on a bill unless they're invited, because that only makes Washington, D.C. kind of logical sense, right? Because someone from Virginia can drive across the Potomac and a Texan would have to travel further. Well, that's not fair, so let's just not let anyone testify. In Austin, we're there to listen. And if we have 3,000 witnesses on one of our 11,000 bills, we're going to spend the time to hear everyone. And that's what makes Texas, Texas. But what we were doing in education committees for higher ed and K through 12 is we were working in silos. We were getting the benefit of that testimony maybe on a Tuesday in K through 12, but not understanding the implications and how to extrapolate that into the effect on higher education and the workforce. That witness could not stay for 2 days and wait 8 hours in line to testify. And a lot of our membership in that education space, they weren't getting the benefit of that testimony. So the committees were combined based on the Lieutenant Governor's preference, and it's been a very good change.
So when we look at universities in particular, it feels like the move to begin examining higher education really kind of began with that, kind of that
Yes.
bringing all this together, kind of creating a holistic view
That's right.
of the kind of the tracking of the taxpayer dollars and the outcomes. Was that purposeful, or was that just kind of a happy circumstance coming out of that combination?
That was by design. I mean, we're looking at major reforms in every category of education, from the policy, which I chair higher ed and K through 12 combined, as you mentioned, and then I also chair on Senate Finance Article 3, which is the subject matter for how we craft a budget and the flow of the dollars. So going after CRT and K through 12, the ban on DEI and the reform, significant change in reform for tenure at the higher education level, the creation of a new curriculum for K through 12, which will get woke out of the classroom and best learning practices infused in our curriculum and rigor. Those things all in my first session as chair of education. And many thought that agenda was not only an agenda that would never pass, they just thought that it was too much, too fast. And in my opinion, if we're not working with urgency in the subject matter of education, we're wasting our time in the Capitol. It ties directly to workforce. It is incredibly important that we not waste one more year in leaving any of these kids behind. And this session, we're going to see a bold agenda as well.
You and I had a conversation years ago. You may not remember it, but it stuck with me. There was this, some legislation was moving through the Texas, so you were in the House at the time. And you made this comment. You said, we in the legislature think 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, but 6 years from now, the kid in fourth grade is going to be trying to figure out if they can go to college or not. And
Exactly.
it blew my mind,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of hubris that comes with the way that we talk about education, talk about public policy. Well, we'll deal with that in 2027. We'll deal with that in 2029.
Right.
But there are real people being affected today, aren't there?
Absolutely. I mean, the state's takeover of Houston Independent School District is a great example of what you just mentioned. So year after year, so many bad decisions, so much money wasted, the outcomes continuing to decline in Houston ISD. But when the state took over Houston ISD a year ago, a little over a year ago, there were 121 schools rated D and F. Today, 1 year later, under more accountability, less administrators, less dollars spent, and better instruction and curriculum, that those 121 D and F rated schools are now down to 39. So how did that happen in a year? How did it happen that 2,000 administrators were terminated within the first week? And how did it happen that only the teachers were kept that were bought in to the plan and to the accountability? And then 1 year later, outcomes are up in a tremendous way for those kids. But I guess my question is, back to your point, how many did we leave behind in waiting to do that?
Governance matters, right?
Yeah.
The policies you set, the people you put in place, the people overseeing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been fascinating. Fall going into the winter, you started talking about something called shared governance.
Yes.
Which is, and make sure I want to make sure I get this right. This is, constitutionally, our universities are supposed to be governed by the boards of regents appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. In practice, a lot of the day-to-day operations have devolved to, a faculty senate, unelected, unaccountable people making very real decisions about the operations of the university, with the president and then kind of the board of regents in many cases have kind of served as rubber stamps. And you seem to indicate that shared governance has not been good for our universities.
Yes. I mean, that nomenclature or that label is really what the nation's leftist professors and their organizations are leaning on to justify their ultimate control over curriculum outcomes, and what is and is not considered high value to insert in a certain degree plan. And then they have a direct say in votes of no confidence over reform-minded presidents that come in to, make changes in the university setting that would be what you and I would consider to be very, very necessary. But as Stephen F. Austin University found, a new president simply talking about zero-based budgeting accounting and reforming the tenure structure 10 years down the road, there was an immediate vote of no confidence. Within 6 months, that president was fired. And within a few months later, that university, almost 150 years old, fell. And now it's a part of UT Austin, supported by the Puff Fund. And that's fine. But I think a lot of lumberjacks were very disappointed in how that whole reform-minded leadership team was commandeered by the faculty senate, when that's not the everyday Texans' understanding of how our university should be working.
So how should they work then? I think a lot of us are used to hearing about, the faculty senate of UT, Texas A&M,
right,
whoever, making decisions and kind of running things. How instead should it be run?
Well, as you mentioned, the governor appoints the Board of Regents, right? And so many of us across the state, we focus on the elected leadership for K through 12 school boards and school districts across the state, right? There's 1,200 school districts in the state, but very interesting, Florida only has 67, by the way. But they have an elected body of a school board that makes decisions. The boards of regents operate much like a school board at the university level, but they're appointed by the governor. And it's very important for those regents to be involved in the selection of the university president, so that decisions are being made from the top down, and that faculty, that they're not imposing political preferences or outcomes on an agenda that subverts or contradicts what the plan, the strategic plan is for the university long term. And ultimately, that can damage the brand of the university and our flagships, our public universities across the state, our tier 1 universities, and so much of what delivers our workforce in Texas. And if we don't turn it around, we'll not lead the nation in job creation. We will lead the nation in fast food job creation.
So you took a lot of arrows by taking the lead in a DEI ban for the operations of higher education. Maybe one evidence of the impact that back in August, the American Association of University Professors surveyed the professors at the University of Texas. 60% of UT faculty said they would not recommend a university faculty position in Texas because of the DEI ban. 25% of them said they were interviewing at other universities and said that their biggest concern was the DEI ban that essentially says, you need to put race and other things aside and focus on merit.
Right.
What should those kind of results tell us about where the mindset of our faculty have been up until now?
It's very telling, and I'm still disappointed that many of those leftist professors that threatened to leave the state when I passed the DEI ban still have not done so. So I'm wondering, if they're going to carry out their plan based on that. But I took tremendous, arrows on filing that bill, because obviously it just sounds mean, right? Why would you be removing diversity, equity, and inclusion of anything, right? But at the end of the day, when you drill down into it, the nomenclature or the title, is not what was being delivered. It was actually, those units were being weaponized against other vulnerable student populations on campus. A&M Asian Americans had been removed from DEI strategies. Texas Tech was firing professors for pledging to treat every student equally. Martin Luther King, right? UT had loyalty oaths, as did many of these universities, for anyone applying for a job as a professor had to sign a pledge or a political leftist loyalty oath not to get a final interview, to get the first interview. And so we essentially had a neon sign above every HR door on every campus in the state that said, if you're not a leftist Marxist, you need not apply here.
It feels like in just in a very short time after the ban went into effect, there's almost this kind of audible sigh of relief from a number of the university presidents, a number of the of kind of the silent faculty, and we've seen some pretty quick, some pretty I think unexpected changes. Texas A&M's Board of Regents telling the faculty senate, no, we're not interested in your opinion on this anymore. You've got Texas Tech making pretty strong strides. And just to go down the line, has it been the case that it's been kind of this loud tyranny of a minority that's been running the universities?
Well, yes, the faculty senates have been under a governance structure. They have had a tremendous impact on the decisions for the universities, and that's changing. So, back to our favorite shared governance reference, they use that terminology through their national organizations to have a foot in the door on, being able not to just ultimately make decisions for the university leadership, but to veto some of those decisions, to push back, to protest, to do everything they can to create, chaos and to be obstinate if they don't like decisions that are made. The regents working with the university president should be deciding the path of the university. We should have degrees of value that are affordable. We should have an experience on our university campuses where when students are coming in and they're deciding, what they want to do in life and what they're interested in studying, that they should understand that if there are 47 degree plans in healthcare administration, but only 2 that are really bringing a return in the workforce, they should understand that. They should know that. But instead, many of our universities have focused on the bottom dollar, and then they have been run with a leftist agenda by the faculty senate. And you mentioned a little bit earlier how the fear in the sky is falling, concerns that professors would just be leaving in droves. Not only did they not leave in droves, but our applications are up. And so I've had professors from all over the state drive to my office, district office in the Woodlands, just to let me know they had no agenda. They just wanted to say hello and thank you and to mention that they're staying in teaching because these changes were made. They felt absolutely voiceless in the room of their peer, and colleagues in meetings. And we don't really know if this is going to completely balance, even to a center left, center right category, how things are happening on these campuses. But we do know it's moving the pendulum. We can feel it. Yeah.
You have said that you want to, in this new legislative session, do more on the DEI problem. What are some of the things you want to accomplish?
Well, we started out with the DEI ban dealing directly with faculty applications and the hiring process. And we also removed within that bill any mandatory pronoun training and these other tactics and strategies that had been infused into just UT alone had 379 DEI employees making almost $12 million a year. And so, I have to give them credit. UT, after the bill was passed, was first to start on implementation and terminating those positions. Some were reassigned, but for the most part, those dollars are now freed up, and we can use that money to recruit the most gifted students across the state that may not have the confidence to feel like they could ever get into UT or afford it or make life make sense to move from wherever they are in the state to be able to attend the university or A&M or Tech or any of these schools that we have here in the state. And it is making a difference in all those categories.
So what can Texans do?
Yeah.
What can a normal person do during the legislative session, after the legislative session? If folks want to help impact the direction of higher education, what can they do?
Well, you mentioned our agenda as we move forward for the next session. They certainly could watch closely on the Texas Senate website our bills as they flow through the filing process into the committee process and ultimately to the floor. We're going to continue on a 2.0 for the DEI ban. We're going to continue to expand that legislation. We're going to build enforcement into the ban on critical race theory. Many of our bills in the past that we have passed for education reform, some of them don't have teeth or enforcement provisions. We're going to be loading those bills with provisions that mandate enforcement and repercussions if there is a failure to do so, and that would be K through 12 and higher ed. So the public, watching closely what we're bringing forward, I think chiming in with support into the Capitol and into the House and Senate offices will be very, very important for us to achieve the agenda we're expecting to. And we have to work with urgency. We cannot look at a 2-year, a 4-year, a 6-year plan, as you and I were visiting about earlier. Education outside of what happens at the dinner table with families sharing together and their faith and their, plan together to moms and dads doing what it takes to make sure their kids are being raised in the right way. The next level is the Texas classroom and K through 12 and higher ed. It's the tip of the spear for the future productivity of the state. And we've fallen seriously behind, even though we lead the nation in job creation and the best place to start a business, Florida, who, by the way, has had 26 years of school choice. They have 360,000 students served by education savings accounts. Their public schools are ranked number 1 in the nation as of last year. So there's a reason why those two things fit together. And we're going to do everything we can on that end to catch up and make sure that unfortunately we can't say we're leading on school choice because 32 other states in America are already there. But we will have the best plan in the country after this session.
How important are alumni in higher education? How important is the voice of alumni in driving the decisions made by the institutions of higher education?
The alumni are the most important in higher education, not only with what's happening on their respective campuses and chiming in, but understanding that the legislature has oversight over public universities in the state. So those alumni and their voices are very necessary and effective in the Capitol in Austin. While we're making these reform changes for higher education in that landscape, they're also very important and valuable in chiming in with their university leadership, and they should not hesitate in doing so.
Well, Brandon, Creighton, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you on today.
All right. Appreciate it, Michael. Great to be here.
And thank you for joining this conversation. Real Texans talking about the real issues impacting the Lone Star State. We'll see you next time.